Hi, my name is Eric, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about my favorite albums of the 2010s. Like I said in my last video on my favorite songs of the 2010s, this is a subjective list, so I would love to see your own lists in the comments down below. Also, the ranking doesn't matter all that much, just the fact that an album is on here means that I really loved it, and especially if it's towards the top of the list, that just means it has a very special place in my heart. Before I jump right into the list, please subscribe to be here when I post new videos every week and hit the notification bell if you'd like to be one of the first people to watch my new videos when they are posted. So without further ado, my number 50 album of the 2010s is Flood Network by Katy Day. This is pop rock obscured like a distant memory, and its radiance bobs just under the surface of its distortion and abundant production details. Number 49 is The Family Jewels by MARINA, formerly Marina and the Diamonds. You can imagine that this album and Born to Die were pretty formative to my music taste. Marina's debut was bold, sarcastic, and clever. Number 48 is Let Them Eat Chaos by Tempest. Tempest is not the only spoken word artist turned rapper on this list, and her use of a central narrative with distinct characters makes the political messages on Let Them Eat Chaos even more effective. Number 47 is How Big, How Blue, How Beautiful by Florence and the Machine. Florence Welch shows off her towering voice on 70s influenced rock songs that make sophisticated use of her trademark spiritual imagery. Number 46 is Next Thing by Frankie Cosmos. Frankie Cosmos is one of the defining twee pop acts of the 2010s, and Next Thing is diaristic and bittersweet. Number 45 is Hurry Up We're Dreaming by M83. Epic is probably one of the most overused words of the 2010s, but this album's gargantuan shoegaze-influenced sound really warrant that description. Number 44 is Sweetener by Ariana Grande. This is an album of affirmations and emotional healing, and it nicely balances Max Martin hits with Pharrell experiments to create one of Ariana Grande's most well-rounded bodies of work to date. Number 43 is Whack World by TIERRA Whack. Working within strict constraints can elicit unexpected solutions, and TIERRA Whack's debut visual album of 15 one-minute vignettes is wildly creative. Number 42 is A Brief Inquiry into Online Relationships by the 1975. It's almost as if this album ages. It starts out with these ambitious, energetic, anxious, sign of the time songs and mellows into these really gorgeous, dreamy 80s inspired ballads. Number 41 is 21 by Adele. Adele doesn't just do ballads, but a variety of down-tempo and up-tempo pop soul approaches. Number 40 is 7 by Beach House. This is the Beach House album that really stuck with me, especially the nervous and throbbing Lemon Glow and melancholic Drunk in LA. Number 39 is Control by SZA. This album is candid and confessional and represents an entire generation, ironically, through its microscopic specificity. Number 38 is A Crow Looked at Me by Mount Eerie. I feel invited into Phil Elverum's world on this album, which is especially brave considering the very tragic circumstances surrounding it, conveyed by achingly stark and straightforward lyrics. Number 37 is Arca by Arca. Her self-titled album is also her most immediate and accessible. She offers a nice balance of vocals-driven experimental pop songs and tracks where she can show off her skills as one of the most talented producers working today. Number 36 is Telephone by No Name. No Name's experience as a spoken word artist like Tempest comes through in the warmth of her rapping, and the song's melodies provided by vocalists such as the very talented Raven Lene make this mixtape a great starting place for pop fans looking to get into more hip-hop. Number 35 is Aquarius by Tinashe, one of the best R&B debuts of the decade. It feels like a culmination of Tinashe's prior mixtapes and varied stylistic interests, and is consistently very entertaining. Number 34 is El Mal Querer by Rosalía, an innovative genre fusion with gripping beat-driven production, desperate fluttering vocals, and some of the best music videos in recent memory. Number 33 is Centers by Ian William Craig. Centers employs an unusual production style, using broken tape decks to create the incredible ambient soundscapes that shroud the album's underlying pop structures. Number 32 is Have Me in Your Wilderness by Julia Holter. The way Julia Holter writes melodies is very impressionistic, with colors coming into view and blending and disappearing with a gasp. Number 31 is Natalie Prass by Natalie Prass. This album feels classic but inventive, with instrumental arrangements that recall the pop soul of the past and an earnest closeness that feels distinctly 2010s. Number 30 is Offerings by Typhoon. It's mournful, cathartic, and expansive, equally grim and thrilling in its exploration of death and grief. Number 29 is Guppy by Charly Bliss. This spot just as easily could have gone to their new album, Young Enough, but I've had more time to sit with the infectious bubble grunge of one of my favorite band's debut album. Number 28 is U.F.O.F by Big Thief. I sang this album's praises in my video on my favorite albums of 2019, and this album really deserves the fanfare it's been receiving this list season, including its Grammy nomination. Number 27 is Stranger in the Alps by Phoebe Bridgers. Despite its very different approach, Stranger in the Alps feels sort of like a 2010s equivalent to Elliott Smith's Either Or, in that it's a decade-defining depiction of our era's distinct brand of sadness. Number 26 is Oil of Every Pearl's on Insides by Sophie. Sophie has been a pop music outlier, an original, and a complete visionary for much of the 2010s. But I suspect that we'll increasingly feel her impact on the mainstream in the 2020s. Number 25 is Titanic Rising by Wise Blood. This is a new classic and one of the last masterpieces released in the 2010s. Number 24 is Mental Illness by Amy Mann. Amy Mann's way of looking at the world and the details she sews into her lyrics are enchanting. Number 23 is 10 Love Songs by Suzanne Sunfor. Originally conceived as an album about violence, the push and pull between aggression and affection recalls singer-songwriter Joanna Newsom's observation that an embrace of love is necessarily accompanied by an awareness of death. Number 22 is Golden Hour by KACEY-MUSGRAVES. KACEY-MUSGRAVES might have single-handedly rekindled the general public's interest in country music, not only because she defied country music tropes, but also because she embraced the aspects of country music that its devoted fans already saw in it, its starry-eyed idealism and warmth. Number 21 is Soft Sounds from Another Planet by Japanese Breakfast. This was supposed to be an extraterrestrial concept album, but as you feel it return to Earth and to the theme of grief, you are pulled into the gravity of Michelle Zauner's amazing songwriting. Number 20 is No Shape by Perfume Genius. It's fitting that Mike Hadrius referenced Kate Bush on this album because, to me, this is the closest we came to the grandeur sonically and structurally of Hounds of Love in the 2010s. Number 19 is Hopelessness by Anoni. One of my favorite singer-songwriters of the century pivoted hard on this album stylistically, and the result is adventurous and urgent. Number 18 is Lemonade by Beyonce. I almost put her self-titled album here because Beyonce and Lemonade are very close in quality to me, and both were also very important cultural moments. But Lemonade stands out to me for its variety of styles and deeper introspection. Number 17 is Freetown Sound by Blood Orange. Dev Hynes takes us on a journey on this album, which ironically is claustrophobic and reflective, mapping the topography of his complex psyche and vision. Number 16 is 151A by Kishibashi. I love this album. It is the album that started it all for me. 151A's dramatic strings and heartfelt lyrics were formative to my music taste, and Kishibashi's entire discography holds a very special place in my heart. Number 15 is, and I'm gonna say the whole title if I can remember it, The idler wheel is wiser than the driver of the screw, and the whipping cords will serve you more than ropes will ever do by Fiona Apple. I feel like 15 is just too low for how masterful this album is, but I really do love it in all the albums that I'm talking about now. Fiona Apple's expressive and daring vocals and her vivid and poetic lyrics make The Idler Wheel one of the most distinctive albums of the 2010s. Number 14 is Art Angels by Grimes. I know the term super producer is usually applied to producers who have worked with a lot of big artists on very popular projects, but I will gladly call Grimes a super producer for her creation of a pop sound all her own and her immaculate attention to detail. Number 13 is Pop 2 by Charli XCX, another wildly innovative pop album that demonstrates Charli's collaborative spirit and courageous creative approach. The shape and structure of Pop 2 are virtuosic, pushing the accessibility of PC music-influenced electropop to its limits. Number 12 is Puberty 2 by MITSKI. Again, I just as easily could have chosen Be the Cowboy, because I count MITSKI among a group of artists including Perfume Genius and Lana Del Rey, who learn and grow and improve noticeably with each release. Puberty 2 is an indie rock gem in equal parts resentful and romantic, and overall astounding. Number 11 is Strange Mercy by St. Vincent. Annie Clark is one of the most inventive and influential indie rockers of the 2010s, and over the last decade has offered multiple great albums with an always evolving sound. You can hear the impact of this album on Lorde and MITSKI, and its mediation of art pop and indie rock drew a blueprint for much of the rock music of the 2010s. Alright, we have arrived at my top 10. My number 10 album of the decade is Emotion by Carly Rae Jepsen. One way that I've seen people describe what they think is a great pop album is one that on release feels like a greatest hits compilation, and that to me is what Emotion is. Many albums have peaks and valleys and fluctuations in their energy level, but on Emotion, Carly Rae never lets up on the intensity of her desire. Emotion awoke my and many others' inner poptimist, and for that reason, it's one of my favorite albums of the 2010s. Number 9 is LP1 by FKA Twigs. In the sequence of events that explains why I am the way I am, LP1 was one of the first bona fide art pop albums that I ever loved. I was really torn on whether I should put Magdalene here, but I ultimately chose LP1 for the sheer number of weird and warped pop hooks that Twigs offers. LP1 is a woozy and intense album tethered by Twigs' restless and agile voice and her always surprising songwriting. Number 8 is Bon Iver by Bon Iver. Possibly Bon Iver Bon Iver by Bon Iver. Perth has the drama and expanse of 2010's indie rock, Michikant is swooning and crystalline, and Holocene, one of my favorite songs of all time, was an indie crossover success that was nominated for a Grammy. Number 7 is Melodrama by Lorde. Lorde showed impressive lyrical prowess on Pure Heroine, but on Melodrama she carefully crafted a front-to-back emotional experience that rang true for anyone who was or had ever been at the precipice of their 20s. Her skeptical and almost clinical look at partying picked up where Ribs left off, consciously embracing hyperbole as a vessel for deep-seated anxieties and fears. Number 6 is Carrie and Lowell by Sufjan Stevens. Sufjan is an indie superstar, and even in the quietness of this deeply personal and mournful album, you can hear echoes of the operatic audacity that made his earlier albums so distinctive. Magnum opus is a strong expression for an artist who has so many albums that have been canonized, but Carrie and Lowell is Sufjan's most direct depiction of himself and his history, and it is a masterpiece. My number 5 album of the decade is Vulnicura by BJÖRK. BJÖRK is a music legend who has consistently pushed the envelope and released truly great albums in the 90s, aughts, and 2010s. Vulnicura is a masterpiece whose quality lives up to her most acclaimed albums, including Homogenic and Vespertine. She reintroduced strings into her sound, and her production with collaborators including Arca feels as visceral and corporeal as on earlier albums including Medulla and Biophilia. Number 4 is The Archandroid by Janelle Monáe. Over multiple albums, she is committed to the concept of a central humanoid character through whom she can explore ideas of race, gender, and sexuality with energy and imagination. The Archandroid is Janelle Monáe's most sprawling and stylistically varied work to date, and it's a bold display of her vivacity, nimble voice, and creativity. Number 3 is NFR by Lana Del Rey. NFR was my favorite album of 2019, and Lana, as you can imagine, defined the 2010s for me. Born to Die might be her most influential work, but as I mentioned earlier, I believe Lana has grown as a singer and a songwriter with each release. On Paradise, she embraced the expanse of the open road. On Ultraviolence, she played with her voice and leaned into the grimness of Born to Die. On Honeymoon and Lust for Life, she lightened her tone and began exploring acoustic folk. And all of that culminated with NFR, her most lyrically specific and vocally impressive work to date. Number 2 is To Pimp a Butterfly by Kendrick Lamar. This album is inspired and inspiring. It leans toward jazz rap, which made it more accessible to me as someone who hadn't really sought out all that much hip-hop prior to listening to this album. There's a reason that Kendrick is a Pulitzer winner. His music is as informative socio-politically as it is gripping musically. His rapping is precise and athletic, and his lyrics aren't just poetic, they're poetry. Okay, we have made it. My number 1 album of the 2010s is Have One on Me by Joanna Newsom. It's fitting that I talk about Kendrick and Joanna back to back, not only because they're both consummate poets, but also because Joanna happens to be a fan of Kendrick's, and it's not hard to see why, because they share a strong narrative sensibility. Joanna arguably released the album of the decade 2 decades in a row between Have One on Me and her 2006 album East. Beyond the obvious elements of Joanna's instantly recognizable voice, complex vocal and harp melodies, and lyrics that could rival Shakespeare and that have inspired my own writing, what makes Have One on Me so special is Joanna's attention to detail. The piano arpeggio that reappears at key moments in the album, the fact that the 1 hour point of this 18-track opus is marked by her literally chiming like a cuckoo clock, her references to folktales, historical figures, and great works of literature. It takes time to sink your teeth into this album and immerse yourself in its world, but no other album in the last decade is as rewarding a listening experience as Have One on Me. So that is my list. Like I mentioned before, please drop your own lists in the comments down below. I'd love to see what your favorites of the decade were. As always, please subscribe to be here when I post new videos every week, and click the notification icon to be notified when I post a new video. Thank you so much for being here. Happy New Year, happy new decade, and until next time, that's it.